There is an old story, though it has no single origin. It is whispered in fragments across cultures, half-remembered in myths, scattered in poems and songs. It tells of a time when humanity lived not by pyramids of power, but by circles of belonging. A time when progress was measured not by what one could hoard, but by what one could share. In those days, wealth was not accumulation but circulation, like water flowing through rivers, nourishing everything it touched. Power did not rest in the hands of the few, but in the bonds that tied communities together. Knowledge was not guarded as treasure, but offered as fire, passed from hand to hand to light the way forward. The story says that somewhere along the way, we forgot. The circle fractured. We began to build walls instead of bridges, to measure worth in tokens instead of trust. Ambition hardened into greed, and survival became competition. What once bound us together now set us apart. We do not know exactly when the turn was taken. Some say it was the moment a field was fenced and called mine. Others say it was when tokens of exchange became idols of worship. Perhaps it was always a slow drift, so subtle we did not notice until it was too late. And so here we are, surrounded by marvels of invention, yet haunted by the feeling of being trapped. We have the knowledge to end hunger, to heal disease, to restore the earth, and yet progress stalls, weighed down by division and the hunger for more. The forgotten path still waits, somewhere behind us, or perhaps ahead. The question is not whether it exists, but whether we have the courage to turn back toward it. In the beginning, money was nothing more than a symbol, a mark on clay, a bead of stone, a piece of metal. It was a tool to free us from the limits of barter, to let the shepherd trade with the potter with the fisher. At first, it was a bridge, a way to connect lives that would otherwise remain apart. But bridges can be guarded. A bridge can become a toll gate, and a toll gate can become a wall. Slowly, almost without notice, money stopped being a symbol of trust and became the measure of worth itself. What was once a servant became a master. The earliest philosophers warned of this danger. Aristotle wrote that wealth pursued for its own sake would distort the human soul. Later, Rousseau imagined that inequality began when someone first fenced land and declared it mine. And still later, Marx described how capital grows not to serve human need, but to satisfy its own relentless appetite. Each in their own way spoke of a turning point, the moment when exchange shifted from binding us together to pulling us apart. Yet money itself was never the crime. It was a tool, nothing more. The fracture came when tokens became idols, when the sign of value was mistaken for value itself. Wealth no longer flowed like breath in and out, sustaining life, but began to pool in stagnant corners. Greed does not reveal itself as monstrous. It approaches gently, cloaked in the language of progress and ambition. In the early days of trade, it whispered, "Strive a little harder, gather a little more, secure your future and your children's future." At first, it was indistinguishable from survival, but while survival ends with sufficiency, greed has no end. Philosophers as far back as Aristotle warned that wealth pursued for its own sake would distort the soul, turning means into ends. Later, Rousseau spoke of how inequality was born when someone first fenced land and declared it mine. Still later, Marx argued that capital grows not to meet human need, but to satisfy its own hunger for expansion. Across centuries, the diagnosis has been the same. When the pursuit of more becomes the highest good, the bonds of trust fray. And yet we continue to admire greed when dressed as success. We idolize those who accumulate, forgetting to ask whether their gain diminishes the circle of the whole. Greed isolates. It turns neighbors into rivals and reduces community to competition. It builds empires of glass and steel while leaving hunger at their gates. The ancients would have said, this is the shadow of desire. Desire is not the enemy to love, to learn, to build, is to affirm life. But greed distorts desire, bending it inward until the vessel consumes itself. It mistakes accumulation for fulfillment and growth for wisdom. Now, as we stand beneath the night sky, a new light approaches. The Comet 3I Atlas. Some call it an omen, others a ship. Its icy trail reminds us that the universe does not measure progress by what we hoard. Out there, abundance's infinite stars are born in silence while we quarrel over scraps. Perhaps the question is not whether greed was inevitable, but whether we can look up, see that light, and remember there was always another path. Scarcity is humanity's oldest illusion. It is the story whispered through markets, carved into laws, echoed in classrooms. There is not enough for all of you. Compete. Take what you can before it is gone. This tale has shaped our instincts as much as any myth of gods or kings. It has justified conquest, slavery, and wars. And yet, the earth has rarely been stingy. Grain grows faster than hands can harvest. Oceans teem with life. Sunlight pours endlessly upon us. Even knowledge, the one treasure that multiplies when shared, is fenced and locked, sold at a price. The truth is that scarcity is often manufactured. The pyramids of wealth rise higher when many are kept at the base, straining for crumbs. Philosophers have seen through the veil. The Stoics taught that nature gives enough for need, but never enough for greed. Indigenous traditions across the world held that hoarding disrupted the balance, that abundance was maintained only through reciprocity. But these voices were quieted when scarcity became the engine of power. Bread was burned to keep prices high. Shelves were emptied while warehouses overflowed. Scarcity ceased to be a condition of nature and became a condition of design. The Comet 3I Atlas glimmers faintly in the night, as if to mock us. It drags behind it a frozen library of water and carbon, the same ingredients that seeded life here. To the universe, abundance is not a dream, but a default. Stars scatter elements like seeds, planets form in riotous plenty. Only on Earth do we convince ourselves there is never enough. Scarcity keeps us shackled, fighting one another instead of lifting each other. It keeps our eyes downcast, when perhaps what we need is to look up to see in that approaching light a reminder that the chains are of our own making. Once, human life was closer to a circle. Families gathered around fire, villages shared the burden of harvest, wisdom passed from elder to child without cost. The circle was not perfect, conflict and envy still flickered, but it reminded us that survival was bound to one another. Then came the fracture. When wealth pooled into the hands of a few, the circle stretched into a pyramid. At its narrow peak stood kings, priests and merchants. At its wide base, the many who labored but did not partake. Inequality hardened into law. Some were declared worthy, others disposable. Over centuries, this pattern became invisible, like the air we breathe. The philosopher Rousseau once wrote that inequality began the moment someone fenced land and said, "This is mine." And yet, the fence did not hold back grass or sky, it only held back people. The fracture was not natural, but agreed upon, enforced by those who benefited. Today, the pattern is sharper than ever. A handful command oceans of wealth, while billions scrape for drops. Progress marches in name, yet hunger persists, illness spreads, and education falters. The circle has not only fractured, it has been forgotten. Above us, the Comet 3I Atlas grows brighter. Astronomers debate its origin, a wanderer from another star, perhaps even an interstellar messenger. For some, it is a reminder of how small our divisions are compared to the vastness beyond. For others, it is an omen, a cosmic witness to our failure. What would the circle look like if restored? Could we imagine a society where resources flowed outward again, returning to all rather than rising endlessly to the peak? Or is the fracture too deep, the pyramid too entrenched? The comet draws nearer. Whether it is a stone, a ship, or a mirror, it asks us one silent question. Will you remain divided or remember the circle you once abandoned? Across the ages, there were always voices who warned us. They did not speak in unison, but their message carried the same undertone: beware of forgetting one another. The Hebrew prophets thundered against those who add house to house and field to field until no space is left for the poor. The Buddha taught that clinging and craving are the roots of suffering, and that only through compassion does the wheel of life turn rightly. Jesus overturned the tables of the money changers, declaring that wealth without justice is corruption. Centuries later, Marx would write of alienation, the slow estrangement of human beings from their labor, their nature, and each other under the weight of capital. Even the poets joined the chorus. Shelley, Whitman, and Rumi, each in their own way, pleaded that love and unity were not ornaments, but the marrow of existence. Their words were seeds, yet the soil of society was often too hard for them to grow. These voices were not merely moral appeals, they were survival warnings. They understood that no system built on greed could endure. A pyramid always leans toward collapse. And now, as if summoned by their forgotten wisdom, the Comet 3I Atlas brightens in the night sky. Some gather on rooftops and whisper prayers, recalling the ancient habit of reading omens in the stars. Others dismiss it as ice and rock, yet cannot shake the unease of its timing. For every civilization that ignored its prophets, the end was not sudden, it was slow erosion, a crumbling from within. The question is whether we hear these voices now or only after the collapse is complete. 3I Atlas does not speak, but perhaps its silence is itself a voice, one more reminder that the universe will continue, with or without us. The comet is no longer a faint star on the horizon. It burns with a steady light, its tail sweeping across the night sky like a brushstroke of fire. People gather to watch, divided between awe and fear. Scientists measure its speed, its angle of descent, its composition of ice and dust, but others whisper of purpose. Could it be more than chance that 3I Atlas arrives now when our world is most fractured? Its very name has become a riddle. Insight, integrity, interconnection. 3 points of a compass that humanity once carried, now dimmed. Insight, the ability to see through illusions. To recognize that scarcity is often constructed, that greed wears the mask of ambition, that progress without justice is not progress at all. Without insight, we stumble blind, mistaking shadows for substance. Integrity, the courage to live, aligned with what we know to be true. It is not merely honesty, but wholeness, the refusal to fracture ourselves for the sake of gain. Civilizations collapse not because they lack knowledge, but because they betray their own principles. Interconnection, the truth most easily forgotten. No life exists in isolation. Our breath is the gift of trees, our food the labor of countless hands, our survival the weaving of countless threads. To deny this is to deny the ground beneath our feet. Whether 3I Atlas is rock, ice, or vessel does not matter. It has become a mirror in the heavens, reflecting back to us the compass we abandoned. Some will see it as omen, some as salvation, some as nothing more than a wandering body of stone. But its timing, its brilliance, cannot be ignored. Perhaps the comet is asking a simple question. If the universe offers you a compass again, will you take it? Or will you continue circling the labyrinth of greed until the walls close in? We are told we live in an age of miracles. Machines answer questions in an instant. Towers scrape the heavens. A message can circle the globe faster than a heartbeat. By every measure of invention, humanity appears triumphant. And yet, beneath the glitter, a quiet unease. For all our brilliance, do we feel freer? Technology has connected us, but also surveils us. Medicine prolongs life, yet entire nations lack basic care. We can send probes to other planets, yet struggle to provide shelter to those without homes. Progress, it seems, has raised new walls even as it tore old ones down. The prison is subtle. Its bars are made not of iron, but of endless distraction, of systems designed to keep us consuming rather than reflecting. We are promised freedom of choice, yet most choices are shallow variations of the same path. We call it advancement, but advancement toward what? Faster cages, brighter chains. The Comet 3 I-Atlas streaks brighter in the sky each night. To some, it is a reminder of what true progress looks like. The quiet, relentless unfolding of the cosmos, stars born and dying, galaxies spinning without claim or ownership. Out there, expansion is not measured in profit, but in being. The universe advances without need of applause. Perhaps the prison is not technology itself, but the spirit in which we wield it. When innovation serves greed, it deepens the cage. When it serves interconnection, it opens the circle. 3i Atlas asks us, without words, what will you use your gifts for to bind or to free? Progress without wisdom is only acceleration toward collapse. The challenge is not to invent more, but to remember why we invent at all. A handful of names shape the fate of billions. Their fortunes are so vast they eclipse the wealth of nations. Their decisions ripple outward, deciding who eats, who works, who suffers. It is said that humanity is more connected than ever, yet in truth we are tethered to the whims of the very few. History has seen this before. Pharaohs, emperors, kings each claimed divine right to rule, each amassed treasures on the backs of the many. But never has the imbalance been so stark as now. The wealth of the few does not merely rest in vaults, it directs markets, controls technologies, and bends governments to its will. The philosopher Hobbes once argued that without strong rulers, life would be nasty, brutish, and short. Yet what we face now is its inversion. Strong rulers who prolong suffering not through chaos, but through control. A world designed not for flourishing, but for extraction. And what of progress? How much of it is slowed, stifled, or redirected because true abundance would topple the pyramid? Clean energy could free us from scarcity, but scarcity sustains profit. Medicines could cure, but cures are less profitable than treatments. The circle could be restored, but the few sitting atop the pyramid would rather it remain fractured. Above, the Comet 3i Atlas glows heavier in the sky, as though it too feels the gravity of our imbalance. Some see it as judgment, others as hope. If it is a ship, perhaps its passengers look down in wonder, not at our machines, but at our willingness to live in chains of our own design. The weight of the few bends not only our societies, but our spirits. And yet, like all top-heavy structures, pyramids eventually fall. The question is whether they collapse upon us or whether we step aside and rebuild the circle before it is too late. It is tempting to believe the fracture is permanent, that greed and scarcity are eternal, that pyramids are the only shape humanity can build. Yet history whispers otherwise. Again and again, people have risen against the weight of the few. Revolutions, however imperfect, remind us that the circle is not lost, only buried. The Stoics taught that virtue is within our grasp, no matter the corruption around us. Indigenous traditions remind us that reciprocity, giving back to the land, to the people, to the unseen, is the foundation of balance. Even modern science shows us interdependence. Ecosystems thrive not through domination, but through cooperation, networks of life sustaining one another. The wisdom has never left, we have only silenced it. And now the Comet 3i Atlas looms brighter, undeniable. Some say it is merely passing through, as others have before, but others feel its timing is no accident. To them, it is less a threat than an invitation, a mirror held up by the cosmos, offering us a chance to return to what we once knew. The possibility of return does not mean nostalgia, a retreat to simpler times. It means remembering the compass, insight, integrity, interconnection, to see through the illusions we live under. To live in alignment with truth. To rebuild the circle, not as it was, but as it could be. Whether 3i Atlas is a silent witness or a vessel carrying minds greater than our own, its presence forces a question. Do we continue forward, blind and divided, or do we return to the path abandoned? The circle forgotten? The return will not be easy, but perhaps it has never been easier to begin. Imagine, for a moment, a world where the circle is remembered, where wealth does not pool at the top but flows outward like rivers replenishing the soil, where technology is not a cage of distraction but a bridge of connection, serving need rather than profit, where nations measure their strength not by armies or markets but by the well-being of their people and the health of their land. Unity does not mean sameness. It does not erase individuality or silence difference. It means recognizing that every voice, every life, is a note in the same symphony. Harmony does not flatten, it deepens. The ancients spoke of this truth, our poets still echo it. We only need to listen. The awakening of unity would not be sudden. It would begin with small choices, communities reclaiming shared responsibility, neighbors turning to one another instead of to distant powers, individuals choosing integrity over convenience. Slowly, the cracks in the pyramid would widen until the structure could no longer hold. In its place, the circle would return not as an echo of the past, but as the architecture of the future. And above this awakening, the Comet 3i Atlas blazes brighter than ever. Children point to it, asking if it is a ship, a star, or a sign. Perhaps it is all three. Perhaps it is nothing but ice and stone, and yet even so, it has become more. A mirror of possibility, a reminder that the universe itself thrives on circles, cycles, and interconnectedness. If unity were to awaken now, it would not be because 3i Atlas saves us, but because we choose to save ourselves in its light. The comet is a witness, not a rescuer. The awakening is ours to claim. The comet now dominates the sky, a streak of brilliance no one can ignore. Telescopes track its every detail, while stories and fears ripple across the world. Some see it as an omen of destruction, others as a vessel of hope. But perhaps it is neither. Perhaps it is only a reminder that the universe continues vast, patient, indifferent, while humanity decides what to become. We stand at a threshold. One path continues as before, greed enthroned, scarcity manufactured, progress bent into cages, the weight of the few pressing heavier on the many. That road leads toward collapse, whether slow erosion or sudden fall. The other path is uncertain, but alive, the return to the circle, guided by the compass of insight, integrity, interconnection. It asks us to see clearly, to live honestly, to remember we belong to one another. It does not promise ease, nor does it erase conflict, but it offers the possibility of a civilization worthy of its gifts. 3i Atlas will pass, whether we notice or not, but what it leaves behind is up to us. Perhaps it will be remembered as a comet that once brightened our skies. Or perhaps it will be remembered as the mirror that woke us, the silent witness that arrived just as humanity was ready to choose. The journey ahead is not written in the stars, it is written in us. And as we look upward, toward that blazing arc across the heavens, we might dare to ask, will we remain captives in pyramids of our own making, or will we step into the circle once more? The choice is here. The time is now. The future waits.